Bop, the tabletop super show. Bop, the tabletop super show.
Hey guys, I'm Stevie Ray. Welcome to the Tabletop Super Show. Today, I want to show you guys my go-to method for using contrast paints. We're going to be specifically painting today one of the pieces of this Walls and Pillars Forsaken Temple add-on set from Dwarven Forge. Now, Dwarven Forge Terrain can come either painted or unpainted. Since this was given to me as an unpainted variety, I had to look up how to best prime and work with these. And I found that the best thing to do is to use Army Painter primer, which keeps the material from becoming tacky after you've applied it. Now, there's a lot of reasons for using contrast paints for speed and rapidity, and I've become somewhat of a convert of using these and speed paint, contrast, dipping ink style paints, and that's the ease of use. But there are a few sticklers and some things that some people don't realize when they first start using them. And that's what we're going to get into today. There's a specific method in applying contrast paints to make them a little bit easier to use. And so that's what I'm going to be doing today. Is we're going to put these. I'm going to put this under the lens, and I'm going to try to copy as close as I can to this other piece that I painted with contrast paints a couple months back, because my plan is to use these in a diorama display build. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get this under the camera and start the painting. I'm also going to list the paints that I'm going to be using, which I'll tell you as I use them. See you guys at the table. Okay, so here I am, and I'm going to be trying to replicate this Dwarven Forge piece that I did with contrast paints a few months back. I'm going to show you guys the process I do when I'm working with contrast paints, and especially on terrain like this, if I'm using contrast. One of the things I do is I work straight out of the pot. I normally don't bother with thinning it or anything else, because it's terrain. But what I like to do is I like to go from dark to light when I'm working with contrast paints. If you do it the other way around, it's a lot harder to fix mistakes than if you do it with the dark first. Once you put the light coats on and your dark coat goes on and your dark coat gets on your light coat, you have to paint everything white again. Whereas if you're doing your dark coats, like the stonework and stuff on this first, then it won't be so bad, because if you get some of this yellow into some of this dark stuff, it's actually not going to show up. So I'm going to begin with what I did with this originally, which was all the stonework and stuff on top, with a first layer of rattling grime, which I've already shaken up and have right here. We're going to work right out of the pot for this. Okay. This is going to be done in stages, so there's going to be some cuts in this. So bear with me for that. We're going to work right out of the pot. I'm going to go back with some thinned Garrigach sewer to kind of filter. And that's what I did with the other model, the other piece. So we'll get our first contrast layer on there. We'll work with contrast, try to get everything done in one pass, and work in areas if you have to, because until it dries, you're gonna not be able to really mess with it too much. If you do, what'll happen is you'll end up tearing the paint and it will look terrible. It'll be really hard to fix. If you get a little bit too much in an area, like right here, where I kind of went a little heavy, you can actually reload your brush and just move it on to the next spot. In fact, it's still wet. Let me define that real quick. I'll show you what I mean right now. See, now it's in doubt, but while that's still drying on the other side, I can actually just take a little bit off of that area and like so. Kind of refill my brush and thin that area out the tiniest bit, and then we can go back and apply it over here. So just remember, you can move it around for a couple minutes at least, up to a couple minutes. It depends on, you know, the humidity of your area. If you live in the desert, your mileage may vary on this. See, and because I went dark and got a little bit onto the light area, I can go back. Not going to be that big of a deal. Here, let's do the... And we're going to do the top. And then we're going to let this dry, and then I'll come back to it once it's done. And we'll do the next step, which will be doing these edges in snakebite leather, which is all the trim. And then we're going to do Garrigax sewer on all the areas that that I'm painting with Rattling Grime right now, because it gives some variation. Okay, so now that our Rattling Grime is pretty much dry, I'm going to go ahead and do this middle section right here in snakebite leather. We're going to work right out of the pot again. I'm taking care not to completely overload the brush while I work in these details. This is once again the second darkest color. After this, we're going to go to our red, our green, our orange, and then finally we're going to do cover everything else in an Agaros Dune contrast. This might get minimal highlighting with the diorama piece it's going to go into at the very end, but for right now at least, it's going to be good enough until I have every other element in place. Once again, I'm kind of working in sections, trying to make sure, go back while it's still wet, make sure I deposit a little bit of this contrast as the shade. And just a couple other little spots to do. One is this other side here, and then we're going to go back and do just the top and bottoms of it. Try to get the colors all the way up for accuracy's sake. And that's the snakebite leather done. Oh, little spots. One spot there. Okay, now it looks like I got pretty good coverage. So we're gonna get onto the Garrigach sewer. Now for this one, I am gonna thin it a little bit with some water because what I want to do is we're gonna create a filter. Here, focus back in on this. Okay, so we're gonna get a little bit of water down here onto my wet palette, and then kind of pull that in so that it's a little bit thinner, maybe even thin it a little more. Because what I want to do here is just kind of give it a little bit of color variation so that it kind of looks like it's been outside, because these pieces are going to be at the back of a diorama and are going to look like it's in an outside area. Okay, here we go. Now, this time I'm going to load the brush pretty heavily, and we're going to go and start tinting. Kind of give a patina, if you will, to this. Here, let me get this back into focus now. Here we go. Better. Okay. You can do more than one pass if you want of this, but just to get a little bit of variation on it's a good thing. So that's what I'm shooting for. Almost glazing with the contrast paints, if you will. So now we got kind of a little bit of a color put into it, and gave our stones a little bit more, the stonework a little bit more depth. A backfilling where there's still a little bit of white showing. So we'll go back to this, and the next colors we're going to do is going to be, I'm going to be putting some Blush Terror red around these little fire areas, and then we're going to put a little bit of green in the center. We're going to do red to orange. We're going to, she's going to end up actually being yellow, matching these, but this entire piece is going to be two-tone green. And then everything else is pretty much going to just be Agaros dunes. I got to fix a couple spots. We can do this right now. Always better to fix the dark areas when working with contrast with white than trying to fix the light areas if you get dark on them. That's why I do it the way I do it. Plus, when you get to your final lightest colors, you can pretty much just kind of slap that last final Agaros, as you guys will see when I finally finish it. That the Agaros just kind of gets brushed almost like you're doing a wash, all over wash, and it's going to pick all those last spots up, saving you just a little bit of time. You can be a little bit more haphazard with it. So we'll let this dry. Okay, so now that snakebite leather is dried and our glaze is dried, I'm going to go ahead and start working with the green, which is going to be going right here. And it's also going to go into the centers of each of these fires. So we're going to start with Creek Camo, right out of the pot once again, and start picking some of these details out. You're going to want to barely load your brush pretty well this time. You want to deposit some shade when you have really raised details. Get a little more even. I like Creek Camo because it's kind of a desaturated green. It's kind of grungy. But I am going to go back once this is fully dry and add a little bit of Warp Lightning contrast, which is a much brighter green, to just some spots, just to pick out a little bit of color variation in the greens, which is a good stand-in for doing stuff like highlighting when you don't want to sit and highlight a piece of terrain or something that's going to be in the back of a diorama. Stuff like that, you know, you can get away with some of these little hacks like that that will make it just a little bit, make it look good, but also be a little less frustrating. Crank it out a little bit quicker. So there's that. So now what we're going to do next is I'm going to do the centers of these fires, and for this I'm actually going to a double O brush because I don't want to get all of the contrast paint anywhere but where I'm trying to paint it, which is literally just picking this little detail out green. That's the green part, and we'll do the other side. Clean this up because I got the tiniest bit elsewhere, but it's fine. And then that's where the start of our green is going to be. This has to dry now so that I can begin doing the orange process. I mean the red process, which will be the next thing I do. And then while the red's drying, we're just going to move right to orange and do a little tiny bit of wet blending with the fire that's on either side of her. Now that this is dried a bit, we're going to start working on the actual pieces of fire that are on either side of the snake lady on this top part right here. So we're going to start with Flesh Terror Red. And this time, instead of thinning, we're we're going to work straight out of the pot, but we're also going to go right afterwards into this Magmadroth flame and kind of wet blend it up. You can blend a little, you can get blends with contrast paints. And once again, I'm going to be using a double O brush for finer detail. just kind of block that in, just in a square. Now, without letting it dry, we're going to go right into Magma Draw. Once again, sticking with the double O. Don't want to overload your brush for this step either. Let's see if I can even get it in a little closer. There we go. Make it a little lighter. And then we're going to clean the brush and do the tips just straight orange. It's already started to go to an orange. Now we're going to get it to a bright orange at the ends. There's enough yellow on it that I'm sticking with the bright orange. Like so. Creates a pretty cool kind of effect. And once we hit this with a yellow, I'm going to take some care around these, but they're going to look cool. It might take it the tone down the tiniest bit, but it's not going to take it down very much. And all of this is still going to show through. We'll even go over a little bit of orange anywhere I might have missed on the bottom. And there's the next step. Now, you might have noticed down here, I have a little bit of cleanup I have to do. So we're going to go back with a white and clean that up before we get to the next step, which is going to be adding some Agaros dunes liberally to pretty much the whole thing. So you can fix your mistakes a little bit. So, okay, now we're back for the next step, which is to add a bunch of Agaros dunes to this. And then we're going to use a little bit of Warp Lightning contrast paint to pick out a little bit of the green snakes on the bottom. And then for the most part, this model's finished and will be ready to be put into the diorama. This time I'm going to get a good amount. It's going all this trim, like so, as well as our little snake person. Now I don't have to be as precise, because these colors aren't really going to bleed through much onto the rest of it. not in any meaningful way. Get these little pulls here. See how I'm kind of going over onto the stones, and you can't even tell I did. There is no meaningful color change to the stonework, and this is why, you know, I work from dark to light. It leaves, if the majority is a lighter color, it especially makes sense to do it this way, because you'll be able to just crank out the very end of it quite easily. This one's going to be the more front and center behind the models on the diorama, so I don't mind it being slightly brighter. But we'll take a look at it once it's completely dry, and I may actually go over with another very thinned down glaze of Garrigach sewer over all the yellow and stone parts. But I'm pretty happy with the process, and pretty happy with how this has turned out. So here we go. Here's the original. It's a little bit darker, and I think I did go back with a screen of Garrigach sewer. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to paint over the flames with some Agaros dunes as well before I call it done. Let's do this. Let's grind these down just a little bit. Yeah, I like how it turned out. We're going to do one quick thing before I let this dry, and I think I'm going to call this good, even though it's a little bit brighter. I kind of like how we got a couple different looking stones to go into the backdrop. It's going to give it a little more variation, less samey kind of look to it. But we're going to get a little bit of this warp lighting here, and we're going to pick out just some of the raised areas of the entwined snakes near the bottom of the piece. That way it gives it kind of a double green. Gives it more of a painted kind of look to the piece of terrain. Not painted like I painted, but like painted as if it was like, you know, a real full piece and not like something I slapped together. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this process. I enjoyed filming it and painting this guy up, and I'm looking forward to show you guys more of the terrain work on the diorama I'm currently working on. So yeah, that's how I do contrast paints, working from dark to light, and then kind of picking out a few things in different variation so that you have an interesting composition at the end. So that's going to do it for this episode. If you guys found any use whatsoever out of this, please like and subscribe for more tips and reviews and other stuff that comes out of this hobby space. Just want to thank you guys all for watching, and I really hope to see you in the next one. And until then, adieu.